Hi friends and readers, I am doing another reading vlog this week. If you've never been to my channel, I typically do a reading vlog almost every week. There are a few weeks here and there that I do a more sit down video, but for the most part it's a reading But for the most part, it's a reading vlog and I typically read 2 books a week. A little bit of background, I do work full time. I do a lot of work from home, but it is 40 hours a week, whether I'm working from home that week, going in, or a little bit of both. And so I'm usually reading before work, on my lunch break, and after work. A lot of my reading vlogs have a theme to them or an idea behind them to help pick which 2 books I read that week or how much I read each day that week. But for this week, I decided to take it easy and do a mood reading vlog off of my TBR. More in particular, the 2 books that I'm reading this week, I've been highly anticipating. I've seen such great things about these books in the booktube universe, but I've been waiting on them to deliver in Libby and or get a hard copy or get my hands on a hard copy of them. And so I am super excited for what I've got in store for this mood reading vlog. I think that's pretty much the introduction for this week's vlog. It's going to be very casual for me. It is currently 7:15 in the morning. I have to start logging on for work at 8 o'clock. So I might do a little bit more reading this morning and then introduce you our first book of the week while I'm on lunch today. Hello. While it may not look like it, it is actually a few hours later, 12:02. Just gone on my lunch break and wanted to update you on the first book that I'm mood reading off my TBR this week, and that is The Favorites by Layne Fargo. I put a hold on The Favorites on Libby a long time ago. It's been months now, and there were just so many people in line for this book, so I've just been waiting, and then finally last week the Libby hold notified me that I was first in line and was available to read, and of course I snatched it up last week, and you have 2 weeks with it, so I knew I wanted it to be this week that I read it, so I decided to turn this week into a mood reading week because of it. So I am reading it on my Kindle and I am 28% of the way through this book. I started it yesterday was Monday, and I was listening to it a little bit on my way to work yesterday, and then reading on my lunch break yesterday, and then last night. And here we are, read this morning a little bit as well. 28% of the way through it is approximately page 132. So I'm a good chunk of the way, chapter 25. I have not read any other books by this author. In fact, I don't even know if they have other books. No clue. Let me know if you have, and if there's anything out there that I should also pick up. Now, this is of course, a fiction story. I'm not quite sure what the genre of this is, if they would classify it as sports romance or more so just fiction with a touch of sports romance. There are a total of 475 pages in this Kindled edition, and the book is split into, I believe, a few different parts. It looks like there are 5 parts of the book. You have part 1, the hopefuls, part 2, the rivals, part 3, the champions, part 4, the game, and part 5, the last time. I am currently in part 2, approaching part 3. So we are following Katarina Shaw. Katarina Shaw is an Olympic figure skater, but the part that we're in the story is more so her early teenage years, and we haven't quite approached her Olympic skating career, but we do know that that's coming. It's sort of a flashback to let us know. Katarina does not have a good family life and has always leaned on her best friend, her partner in figure skating and in life, and his name is Heath Rocha. Heath bounced around from the foster care system for quite a long time until Katarina's family took him in, but since then they've lost Katarina's family as well, and her brother is awful, and so it's just been Katarina and Heath their whole lives. So you can imagine how blended they are, and Katarina always wanted to be a figure skater, and so she leaned on Heath to be her partner in figure skating, and so there's always been a ton of passion and a ton of heat and just a great connection while they are figure skating. everything. However, they have not always grown up with the technique and the skill because they haven't had the money and the coaching that a lot of people in the sport have. So we know from the blurb or the summary of the story that they go on to compete in the Olympics as professional figure skaters, and something really bad happens and they don't talk to each other, or something happens where their partnership breaks up. They were so hot in the media when they were figure skating. Now it's been 10 years of silence and a documentary is coming out. And we are getting some clippets in between chapters of people being interviewed for this documentary, previous coaches, previous figure skaters, their idols, and we are learning a little bit about their past and how they were viewed in the media through this documentary snippets. And I haven't gotten to this part, but also in the summary, we know that it's been 10 years and Katarina knows this documentary is coming out. She hasn't spoken up about what happened between her and Heath, but now she's finally going to tell her side of the story because she doesn't want the documentary to paint her in a way without her own voice. And that's where we're currently at. I'm actually still in their teenage years where they are learning the skills and the techniques and trying to compete with the best of the best to actually make it to the Olympics. And so I am still learning their lives and their connections and even things that are fueling them maybe against each other already so early on in their career. I will catch up with you later when we make it probably 50 to 60% of the way through the book to see how we're feeling about Kat and Heath's story. It is Wednesday morning, just about 7:35, so I have to work in about 10 minutes. No, I go to work at 8, but I'm working from home today. But our neighbors appear to be having a tree removed directly in front of our house, so it seems like it's about to get really loud. So I wanted to film an update. I got up this morning before work to read a little bit more because last night I did not read. I watched Dancing with the Stars and then fell asleep immediately. If you're watching Dancing with the Stars this season, it's my first season watching and I'm totally voting for Alex and Val, which is something I never would have thought I would have picked in the very beginning just because, but I think that she has had the greatest progression and is just killing it and killing it and killing it. I also like Whitney and Mark and Robert and Whitney, but I do think I want to see Alex and Val win. Anyways, you're here for book updates. I'm on page 253, chapter 48, 52% of the way through this book. Honestly, the chapters are so short. They're usually, with my reading speed, less than 4 minutes long, and then they do the documentary in between each chapter, so it's really quick to run through. I just haven't had as much time to set aside for it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I have never read a figure skating or ice skating story quite like this one, so when you want to call it like sports romance, it's not the sports romance that you're probably thinking. It's not the college, or I think I need to move my car. It's not the college or high school or even just post-college sports romance that I imagine. This is more of telling a story. It feels like I'm sat in front of a TV screen and a movie is playing. And for the first like 25%, I forget how young Kat and Heath are. They're like 15 and 16 and now we're approaching them in their 20s, but they're so young and this is such an emotional and intense story between them two as they grasp with trying to be professional skaters but also battling their individual lives. Anyways, the tree people out there are making me a little bit nervous, so I'm going to go to work soon, keep reading, but I'm feeling really good. I'll come to you when I finish the book. It is hours later. I am off work for Wednesday and getting ready to settle down for Survivor tonight. And yes, we have gone full Christmas in our household because do what brings you joy. Duh. And I am happy to report that I am going to return my Libby loan for the favorite. It says that there are people waiting in line, so hopefully this makes their day when they get this to their e-library. And I'm returning it it because I have finished The Favorites by Layne Fargo, and I just want to jump to the gun and say that I rated it a 4.25 stars. I was gonna give it a 4 stars, but I felt like it deserved just a little bit more, but didn't feel like a 4.5. And this rating is for no one but me, so 4.25 it is. This book felt so long, but so short at the same time. We had traveled the lifetime of Heath and Kat, or Katarina, and at first they are really young, and I said this earlier, but I feel like for a while there in the second half of the book, it was hard for me to imagine them in their late 20s because I had developed this picture of them being 15, 16, and that image of them traveled in my head. So I had to actively think to myself, these are 26-year-olds, these are 30-year-olds now. Imagine what they look like now. So I kept trying to go back to the cover art and picture them in their attire as older adults instead of the young kids. That one was hard for me. Something happens in the story that you want to think would never happen, but then it happens. And it honestly, when I read it, made me feel sick. And I don't remember feeling like that in a story except for when I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it's been so long since I read that, a few years at least. But I do remember having that sick feeling in a similar way that I got it from this book. I don't know if anyone else out there would relate to that, but let me know if you did. All I have to say is the song choice that they did for the one performance, you know, the performance. I like the song choice, but then while I was reading about it, it made me think, did this book come out more recently? So I need to look up when it came out. Yeah, it came out this year, January 14th, 2025. And finally, I really like this book because I think the author did some good research. I honestly felt like I was immersed into the world of figure skating and Olympic figure skating and just professional figure skating in a way that I have not been in other sports romances, if this is even classified as that. And towards the end, I was a little bit nervous. I felt like I was getting whiplash with all these things that were going on in Heath and Kat's lives, and I was worried, but then I think it wrapped up in a way that made sense for these characters, and I really enjoyed. So far, so good on mood reading this week, and I only think it's going to get better with the next book that I'm gonna pick up tomorrow. I've been looking forward to reading it. It's been a very anticipated read for me as well, but I think I'm gonna let The Favorites settle with me tonight, watch Survivor, and pick up the camera tomorrow when we're ready to start the next book. Talk to you then. Hello, this is Editing Victoria. This is not Victoria that you're seeing in those video clips, and that is because I have had the heartbreak of my booktube editing experience. And for the entire second half of my week, when I picked up this next book, which was honestly one of my most anticipated reads off my TBR, I accidentally set my camera to a setting. It's like so easy to accidentally click a button on top of the Sony camera. It's like the SQ setting, and essentially that setting does not record audio at all, and I didn't figure it out for the entire rest of that week and the entire book, and that is just devastating for me. But hey, what can you do? We're gonna pivot, and so you're gonna get me like this, pretty much trying to go back and remember all of the thoughts that I had about this next book, because I had thoughts, lots of them at that. And I do have my laptop right here because as I was going through the clips, I was trying to remember some of the things that I might have been saying, even though there was no audio on them. The next book for this week that I had just been waiting and waiting and waiting to read was Atmosphere by Jenkins Reid. And you'll see me holding it up a lot in the video clips. I had put it on Libby pretty much back when it came out, and I don't know about your Libby, but mine takes forever. If it's a popular release, I'm not gonna get it for months and months and months and months. And I had been waiting and waiting and waiting, and when I decided to pick up The Favorites, I thought I'm gonna finally read Atmosphere because I'm gonna do a really good mood reading week for me. And I just couldn't get it on Libby. It was still not delivering to me. I was not first in line. And then my library acquired so many more copies of the book as soon as I went in to go to purchase the book. And so I became first in line, and then it delivered immediately. And I don't buy books typically, but this one I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and buy the hard copy. So I buy the hard copy, and I'm not mad. Based off of how people are rating the book, I'm thinking it is a book I'm probably gonna want on my shelf anyways. I love the cover. It gives Lover Albums by Taylor Swift, so I'm not mad that I bought it. But then I did get it on Libby and have since returned it back to Libby so all the people waiting behind me can also read it. For Taylor Jenkins Reid, I have read 2 of her books, and I've read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. I did like 7 Husbands better than Daisy Jones and the Six. I read both of these books so early on into my reading experience because of Book Talk and how popular they were on Book Talk, but I hadn't read a Taylor Jenkins Reid since then, and so I was really excited to pick up Atmosphere. One of the other books I've had my eye on is Carrie Soto is Back. I know people in the booktube verse have liked that, but I haven't decided if I have or if I should read it, so let me know if you've read it and if I should pick that one up. Based off of everyone's thoughts on Atmosphere, I only ever see people in the booktube and Book Talk world rating it a 4 and a 5 star, which is why it was so heavy, and which is why I really wanted to read it. I just thought if everyone else is enjoying the experience, probably I will too. I also had seen that everyone ever reading it was definitely crying at the end of the story, and so as I was reading Atmosphere this week, I was anticipating what the ending would be like. And I will say it, I'm a crier, have always been a crier. Something in TV, movies, or books that's sad, I'm going to cry. Even the author's note of this book almost took me out. Throughout the week, you'll also see that I was listening to it and reading it. Had some Spotify hours that actually renewed tomorrow, so I wanted to get the most out of those hours. And this was one of the only books where I've picked it up and enjoyed listening to the audio and then going back into the book, or reading the book and then going back into the audio. The narration and the story just fit so well to be able to use both formats, and that never happens to me. Usually if I'm picking up an audiobook, I'm not liking it when I'm reading it. Now let's talk a little bit more about Atmosphere and what it's even about without being a spoiler, because I went into Atmosphere knowing nothing other than the fact that it had to deal with a woman going into space. What I really loved about what Taylor Jenkins Reid did with this story is that when you're reading, at least in my typical reading experience, you are getting to know the characters, you're building the setting, the plot, and then bam, at the end of the story something happens and you either resolve that or you don't. But this story starts out with bam, the big event. You know it from the beginning what's happened, and then you're building backwards to try to learn more about those characters. And I think that's why this book is so devastatingly good, because you think it starts out slow, like you already know this big event that's happened, and then you are now trying to learn all these character stories, so it feels slow, but then as you get to know them again, you remember what happened in the beginning of the book. And that leads me to who this book is about. We are following Joan Goodwin. Joan was a professor, and this is in America, I believe in the 80s, and she got an ad or saw an ad, or her family member saw an ad, that NASA was trying to recruit women into the space shuttle program. And so we follow Joan as she applies for the space shuttle program, gets in, and meets all of the other people in her cohort. So we get to learn a lot about the people in her life, anywhere from her fellow space shuttle people to her niece to her sister. And as I said, once she's in the space shuttle program, we get to see what happens. I don't want to spoil it. A big event happens, and then we build backwards from there to learn all of the events that led up to that big event. We're probably somewhere in the clips. At the end of the book, the last 20 pages or so, I cried like a baby, like uncontrollable cries. This story really makes you zoom out, and it makes you feel very present. At least it did for me. It made me want to go outside, breathe fresh air, and take a look at the stars, even though it's daytime right now. It still makes me want to go outside right now. I think you could not ask for more in a love story, and especially a love story that was set up and played out like it did. I also really like that I can tell Taylor Jenkins Reid did her research. She prefaces that in the beginning and the end of the story. Research about NASA, the space shuttle program, science, women in science in the 80s, women in relationships in the 80s in America. I really like that piece of the story. So if you do anything, you pick up Atmosphere. If you've been like me waiting to pick it up, go ahead and pick it up. I rated it a 5 star. 5-star, maybe even a 6-star read for me this year. I absolutely loved it, and it absolutely rocked my world. I'll be thinking about Joan's story for the rest of forever, and this is definitely my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid story so far. And sorry about this extra really long clip, but thanks for staying with me, and hopefully I never do that with the audio clip again because it's so frustrating. But we will persevere, and I'll see you in next week's reading vlog. Bye for now.